A shrill cry emanated through the mansion, followed by a loud clatter as something metal fell to the floor. Standing in the middle of the kitchen, Alana clenched her teeth together as she stared at the newly red mark that stunned her forearm. The pan that she had grabbed, which moments ago had been covered with peanut butter cookies, laid face down by her feet, the cookies themselves scattered halfway across the room. Her body shook from the pain and tears prickled her eyes as she first directed her gaze to the oven globes before glaring at the stupid cooking contraption. She thought she pushed the tray in a little too far, but not that far. Also, if food could even go that deep into the oven, why wouldn't the oven gloves be longer? Now the girl directed her glare to them. Stupid gloves, stupid oven, stupid burn. Stupid her for not asking for help in the first place. She wanted this to be a surprise, to show how well she had gotten with handling the kitchen on her own, and she goes and burns herself. This whole damn evening was just so stupid. What the hell is going on in here? Alana tensed, her glare dropping as her eyes widened. And no. She thought she was the only one here right now. Why was he home? Was he always here and she didn't notice, or did he just return? The only reason she had attempted this mess was because no one was home. As mentioned before, she wanted it to be a surprise. Turning her head to the side, arms still held out, the young teenager saw the oldest of Slender's brothers standing in the open doorway. Unlike his older and younger brother, a mouth could clearly be seen on his face, one which was twisted into a confused frown as he looked around. However, unlike his youngest brother, he lacked visible eyes much like the other two. It was a little harder to tell with him than with them, however, as the fedora he always wore dipped over that part of his face. "Offender, what are you doing here?" the girl asked before she could stop herself, wincing as her slight movement caused her burn to shoot pain up her arm. Easily catching sight of this, the creature's frown deepens and, though it was impossible to see, his eyes narrowed. "I could ask you the same thing, girlie," he responded, walking over to her with his hands in his pockets. Alana scowled at the nickname, but given her current pain, decided not to comment on it this time. "You trying to bake something or something?" he asked, cutting her off before she could speak, looking more closely at the mess. Trying her hardest to bite back the pain, Alana grunted and turned her head away. "Something," she replied stubbornly, unwilling to admit the truth. A tiny smirk spread across the trench-coated creature's face, though fell very fast as he again took notice to her pain. Without another word, Offender slowly tilted his head down in the direction of her arms, which she still held out, and bulked in surprise when he spotted the burn. "Since when the hell can you get burnt?" Exclamation mark. He demanded, shock and even a bit of panic lacing his voice as he reached out to grab her wrist. The girl winced and jumped, but as he actively avoided the burn, it more so surprised her than hurt. This also didn't cause Offender to let go. If anything, he simply tightened his grip on her to ensure she wouldn't pull away. He was self-aware enough not to hold on too tightly, and the oven glove should help a bit, but he honestly wasn't too concerned about that at the moment. Just how was something like this possible? He had seen her get hurt before, but he was under the impression that Alana was immune to burns. Forget about just summing fire, the creature had seen the girl stick her hand directly into flames before. Seeming to have sensed this, or perhaps it was just because Alana was uncomfortable with being examined, she squirmed a bit. "Since always. Fire can't hurt me, but other things can. Especially if it's hot metal," the girl grumbled, still with her head turned. Her fingers trembled inside the glove as the pain from the burn slowly got less bearable and tears began to form in her eyes. Still a little stunned, Offender stared at the wound a little longer, examining every centimeter of it. Then, without any warning, he bent down. Noticing this from the corner of her eye, Alana turned her head back at him and stared at him questioningly, eyes glossy with tears. Just as she's about to ask him what he was doing, a startled gasp left her mouth instead as he opened his own and stuck out his tongue, effectively licking her wound. "Hey!" she yelped, yanking her arm by instinct. Unfortunately, due to Offender's firm grip, she didn't get very far and the guy's tongue curled around her forearm almost like a coiling snake. Alana shuddered at the feeling and her cheeks instantly flushed as she turned her head to prevent herself from having to look at the sight. This was far from the first time she's been licked by the jerk, so she wasn't oblivious to what he was actually doing. It was touching but also didn't take away the fact that the sensation was grossly slimy and just overall weird. It didn't help matters that, mostly due to his supernatural abilities concerning women, it caused her heart to skip a beat. Thankfully she was still young enough that it didn't have its full effect on her, but that didn't change the fact it made her feel uncomfortable. It did, however, make it feel better. "There," Offender said after a few seconds of bathing the wound, uncurling his tongue and retracting it back in his mouth. The moment her arm was free, Alana instantly rubbed the spit off on her flour-splattered t-shirt. "Warn me next time you do that," she grumbled, her face still as red as ever as she held out her arm to examine her forearm. As suspect, though a little shiny from the lingering saliva, the burn was nowhere to be seen, the skin as pink and healthy as before. "Do I ever warn you?" Offender asked cockily, his previous frown now replied with a smirk. Alana shot a glare at him, her cheeks darkening as she refused to answer. Sensing this, the trench-coated creature shrugged. "Maybe next time you want to do something like this, just ask one of us for help, 'kay, kid?" he asked, his grin prominent as ever as he then bent down to pick up one of the scattered cookies with 2 fingers. Taking a bite out of it, Offender turned his back on the still glaring girl and shoved his other hand back into his coat pocket. As he reached the kitchen door, however, he paused and looked over his shoulder, still smirking but now with cookie crumbs around his mouth. "Not bad, by the way. A little easier on the salt next time."